Alright, hello everyone, this is Professor Robert Solis. Welcome to this video lesson. What I want to do is to show you how to create C programs. Now, some of you have taken my other classes and you understand C++. This is what we used to have to use before C++. It's the C language. Now, the C++ means it's an object-oriented programming language. C is not an object-oriented programming language. We call C a procedural language. So you do things in accordance to procedures. You can't create classes. So how do you create a C program? Well, the first thing, just like a C++ program, we'll click on New Project. We're still going to click on C++. We're still going to select the Win32 console application. Over here, let me go ahead and type in CS242. And so what I'll do is I'll just simply say, this is Intro to C, and I'll just go ahead and type in Part 1. All right, so we're still going to create an empty project. And then I'm going to click Finish. And then we get the screen, the IDE screen, allowing us to create a C program. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to hover on top of source files, add a new item. Now, the item that we're going to add is not going to be a C++ program. We're going to change that to a C program. And the way that we do that is as follows. I still select this, but I name it with a C. So I can call this source.c, or I'm just going to go ahead and put today's date. So this is CS242. Actually, I'll just do this. I'll just say intro to C dot C. So notice that this does not say C++ or CPP. I put the dot C. That indicates that this is a C program. So now Visual Studio knows how to treat this. So I add it. It's going to treat it as a C program. I get my cursor over there. So the first part is very similar to C++ programming. We'll say include the stdio.h file. So in C programming, you do put the .h to indicate the library that you want. I'm going to include another library, the standard library. So some of these are responsible for the usage of inputting data and outputting data onto the screen. We're going to use what's called printf and scanf. Others are used for just standard input-output information, so we'll go into that later. I'm just going to show you the basics of C programming. You're always going to have a main function. Now here you have to type in the word void, and then I'm going to put an open and close curly braces. So this is what the beginnings of a C program looks like, very similar to C++. I'm still going to use this system pause. Now remember, I can only use that in in Windows platform. I can't use this in any other platform. So this is not a portable program. This is something that would only run on the Windows platform because of this guy right here. Only Windows has this thing called system pause. If I were writing a program that's portable to Xbox, the PlayStation, whatever platform it is, then I wouldn't want to use system pause. Okay. We still have single line declarations, for single line comments, I should say. So if I have declarations, get user input, calculation, output. So on the exam, I'll ask you, which of the following is a comment? And I'll do something like this. A Visual Basic comment is a single quote like that. I'll put the word comment to try to trick you. And I'll get rid of this comment, this one right here. Right, that's not a comment. That's a comment in Visual Basic. Maybe I'll do this. So I'll say comment, and then comment right here. No, you don't type in the word comment. A single line comment is simply 2 forward slashes. Maybe one thing that I will say is this is a single line comment. No, this is what they call a block comment. So if I have several lines of text, blah, 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 that is encapsulated with this beginning forward slash asterisk, asterisk, forward slash. So we refer to these as block comments. Now, what I do is I just take advantage of Visual Studio. So for example, if I wanted to select this, and if I wanted to comment or uncomment, there's this really cool little thing over here to comment or to uncomment. So if I said uncomment, you can see what happens. If I comment, you can see what happens, right? So in this case, it turned it into a block comment. That's okay, no big deal. All right, in terms of declarations, if you're going to be declaring whole numbers in the C programming language, it's the same thing. You type in the word int. That's an abbreviation for integer. Let me go ahead and type in num1. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set that to 0. we call this declaration and initialization. So this is declaring the variable as a whole number to your Windows operating system, and it's also going to set it to some initial value. In this case, it's going to be 0. Could I have done that in 2 statements? Sure, I could have done this. I could have said int num1, and then I could have said num1 is being assigned to 0. So these 2 statements right here are basically being combined in that one statement. I'm going to go ahead and declare another variable, let's say num2, and I'll set that to 0, or initialize that to 0. And I'm also going to create a variable called sum. Let me create one more variable of type double. I'm going to call that quotient. Now a double is any number with a decimal point. For example, 0.0, 0.1, 0.2, any number, 3.14, negative 5.17, say for example. Any of those numbers are considered doubles or real numbers. So a double is a real number, a number with a decimal point. So we'll just deal with those 2 data types right now, whole numbers and real numbers. So on the exam, the following declares quotient as a whole number, false. The following declares num1 as a real number, false. Right? These are whole numbers. These are real numbers, numbers with a decimal point. Some people get messed up with negative numbers. The following is an invalid double. Well, it's false. This is a valid double. It's a number with a decimal point. That's all you're interested in. Okay. All right. Then over here where it says get user input, here's how we're going to do that. So first, for those of you who are familiar with C, you're used to the cout statement. But in C, you do this. I'm not sure if I said that right. For those of you who are C++ users, you're used to cout. But for C, you use printf. So we'll say enter the first integer. Okay. So we say printout is equivalent to C++'s cout statement. To obtain data, we use what's referred to as scanf. So it looks like the scanf underscore s is what is used to bring in data from the keyboard. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to put a parens. Now I put this guy over here within quotation marks. My expectation is for the user to enter an integer. That's what this means. Now I'm going to use the address of operator and then type in num1. So this is how we would translate from C programming language to English. Whatever the user enters, and I know that they're going to enter an integer because that's what I'm going to be placing the number into is an integer. So the user will give me an integer. That's what this %i means. If that were %f, that would be like a float. So that would be a real number. If that were %s, that would be a string. If that were %c, that would be a character, right? In this case, the letter I represents an integer. All right. Now, take that number that was entered by the user, locate the address of variable num1 in your memory system, and place that number into that location. So that's what this means. Whatever the address of is for num1, place the value that was entered by the user, which better be an integer, by the way, place that number into that location. All right, so we're going to do the same thing for num2, so I'll just simply copy and paste this, paste it, and I'll say enter the second integer, and I'll just simply place that into num2. So it's the same deal. Now, in terms of the calculation, sum is going to be num1 plus num2. We call this guy the assignment operator. The way that the assignment operator works is you read this thing from right to left. So what you're doing, let me translate this into English. Add num1 plus num2. Assign it to the variable sum. So you can think of this as a box. Whatever the result is, put it into the box. Okay, so this equal symbol is not a mathematical equal symbol. This is not like x is equal to x plus 1. Right? No, we're not saying that sum is equal to num1 plus num2. What we're saying is we're reading this from right to left. So that's a good exam question on Wednesday. The following statement is supposed to be read from left to right. True, false. False, right? We are supposed to read this from right to left. Do this, then assign it to this. In the following statement, this symbol right here, and I have an arrow pointing to it, is called the equal symbol. false. We call that the assignment operator. You are assigning, kind of like me assigning you homework, right? You are assigning this to a variable called sum. Now the quotient, so I created a variable up here called quotient, and as you can see here, that's a real number. That's a number with a decimal point. So the quotient, I'm going to handle this a little bit differently. I'm temporarily going to cast num1 as a double. What does it mean to cast? I'll go over that in just a second. I'm also going to cast num2 as a double. So num1, as you can see when I hover my mouse pointer on top of it, just below here, it shows that this is an integer. This is an integer. An integer divided by an integer, I want to get a double so I can place it into this quotient, which as you can see down here is a quotient, is a double rather. How do I do that? I'm going to temporarily treat num1 as a double. That's what this parens with the word double inside of it means. Treat this temporarily as a double. Don't change its nature. Just temporarily treat it as a double. You know, I remember, my mom and my dad, they always used to take me to Magic Mountain, and it says you have to be 12 years old. And of course, I was 10 years old, and I wanted to go on that ride, and my parents said, just treat him like a 12-year-old. That's what's happening over here. I know you're not a double. You're a whole number, but you know what? I'm going to treat you as a double. So if this is the number 1, changing it to a double makes it a 1.1. Yeah, question?
You're not changing the original.
Correct. I'm not changing its nature. Its nature still is to be an integer. I am temporarily treating it as a double. So if this were 3, we're going to turn it into a 3.0. If this were 4, we're going to change it into a 4.0. So in other words, we just add the 0.0 to the end of it to treat it as a double. Therefore, a double divided by a double is going to yield a double. Right? So if this were 5, and if this were 2, well, 5 divided by 2 integer is just 2. Right? But 5 divided by 2 double, like 5.0 divided by 2.0, that's 2.5. So I'm changing the way that I'm treating this number by changing it to a double temporarily. We call this casting. Right? Casting. To cast something means to treat it temporarily as something else than what it originally is, and we're not changing its nature. This is still num1 as an integer. Okay, well now that I have that, let me go ahead and wrap up this video lesson by typing out some stuff. So we'll say printf. That's how you in C programming print out data. And we'll say this. We'll say the sum of, now this is really cool. Watch this, %i. That is going to be a representation for my first number. And I'll have the plus symbol. This is going to be a representation for my second number. By the way, that first number has to be an integer. This second number also has to be an integer. And we're going to say equals, here's that sum, right? That's going to be an integer. \n in the C programming language means go to the beginning of the next line. \t means the same thing as hitting tab. \b means the same thing as hitting the backspace. Right? So there are all these escape sequences rather that you can use. \n just simply simulates you pressing enter on the keyboard. You're going to go to the beginning of the next line. Now, how do I get a number to be displayed over here? Well, that first number is really num1. This second number right here is num2. This third number right here where that %i is, that's going to be sum. And then I put a semicolon and go to the beginning of the next line. So what this means is these are substitutes for what? For num1 in this case. Over here for num2 and over here for sum. And this \n is not going to be displayed. That just simply means go to the beginning of the next line. You're going to see that in just a moment. And then we'll have another printf statement, and I'll say the quotient of, and now let's do the same thing of these numbers. Yes, question?
Do all escape sequences have to be included within the quotes?
Yes, they have to be included within the quotes. So if I did this and \n, that would be, it would generate an error. So you want to make sure that they are within the quotes like that. Good. So the quotient of, I'm going to put a number over here. Well, you can already see that letter F. That represents a real number, right? So that's going to be this, and then I'll put a division symbol over here. I'm going to put another number right here. I'll put an equal symbol. And again, I'm going to put the quotient right here, \n, to go to the beginning of the next line. Now, what does this first %f? Well, that's got to be a real number. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to treat this num1 as a double. So what I'm doing here is I'm casting num1 as a double so that I can put it into here, into this float. And then I'm going to do the same thing for double. I don't need this, by the way. Double num2. And then quotient is already a double, as you can see here when I hover on top of it, actually up here. Quotient is already a double, so I don't have to convert that. I just simply close the parentheses, semicolon, and then I can go to the beginning of the next line. All right, what did I do wrong? Let's see here. So the quotient of, and that's a percent div divided by, okay, that's close. Ah, I forgot over here the comma. Sorry about that. And now, there we go. So this program is finished. Let me save it. This is a C program, and I'm going to run it so I can give you an idea of what the execution looks like. And first integer is 5. Enter. Second integer, misspelling. Second integer is 2. Enter. Okay, so the sum of 5 plus 2 equals 7. That's correct. The quotient of 5 divided by 2, do you see how it's treating this as a double? Because I converted this thing into a double. Right? So it's going to say, instead of 5, it's going to treat it as 5.0. It's going to treat that 2 as 2.0. And you know that 5 divided by 2 is 2.5. So this is a very simple C introduction to C programming, very similar to C++. You're going to add these two libraries. This is going to allow you to use printf and scanf. You you display data like this. I know that in C++, this would be something like cout the sum of, and then I would put num1, and then I would put a space with a plus symbol here, and then I would put num2, and then I would put a space with an equal symbol there, and then I would put sum, and then I would probably put endl to go to the beginning of the next line. That's a C++ statement that reproduces what this does in C programming. The \n is the same thing as endl. Everything is placed within quotation mark, and you have these substitute items over here, and you're basically saying this is a substitute for an integer. This also is a substitute for an integer. This is a substitute for a real number. And of course, you have all these substitution values for characters, strings, bools, so forth and so on. This is just a very simple introduction to the C programming language. So this is Professor Robert Solis. I hope this video lesson was helpful. Have a good day. We'll see you next time.